Okay.
Hello, welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is March 18th, and right now the time is Western time 8:09 a.m. Here's our dear friend, Tom. Hi, Tom, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Tom, actually, he was in Chicago today, and thank you so much spending time with us on your very busy schedule. And Tom worked in FBA for 29 years, and he worked as assistant director of FBI for 5 years. And today we have three questions need to ask Tom your opinion. First is about Mr. Peter Navarro, and he's going to the jail next week for 4 months. So that's the question number one. We want to know that why they are attacking Mr. Peter Navarro so hardly. And second question is, we see Trump go to almost everywhere for the rally. It's just like 2020. It's when he go to the rally, no matter where it is, people are just go there. So many people, so many people. I think it's much more than year 2020. So it seems like he got very good support or enough support to be the next president for this year. So, what is the biggest obstacles for Trump to go back to White House, and can we solve it? It's question number two. And the third question is about the sheriff. What is the constitutional right and obligations of a sheriff? The reason I'm asking the question is because we saw a sheriff from Michigan. He actually write a letter to James Jordan and tell the Congress that he is doing the research and investigation for the fraud of year 2020 election. So lots of people not really clear what is the constitutional right for the sheriff. Can sheriff do the investigation independently and have some rights to bring up something? So that's the third question.
Okay.
All right.
So you
So
want to talk about Peter Navarro first?
right first.
Okay. Normally, normal procedure is that a close advisor of the president they have executive privilege. In other words, that person does not have to testify about what private conversations they had. So if the president, Peter Navarro, was one of President Trump's closest advisors. Now they want to bring him in and make him testify about January 6th or whatever the issue is. Navarro says, I have presidential, clearance or whatever, executive immunity. Now, normally, the proper procedure is that when there's a dispute between Congress and whoever it is they're trying to get to testify under this clause, under executive privilege, that it's the privilege of the president to have private conversations with his advisors, and the advisors do not have to reveal what those conversations. Now, everybody in the White House doesn't get that, but some of the very closest ones that talk to the president almost every day have that. If there's a dispute, the requirement is in the law that the dispute goes to court. And a judge hears both sides, and the judge can grant the executive privilege, in which case Congress cannot punish the person for not testifying, or the judge can not do it. What Navarro's attorneys have been saying is take it to the judge. Let's get a ruling. If the judge says, too bad, you have to testify, he'll testify. So Navarro is questioning the legality of making him testify without a judicial hearing to decide. So Congress says, we don't care about no judge. You're going to jail. You either talk or you're going to jail. and it's only 4 months, but it's still 4 months to go to a jail. So in any event, that's what it's about. Navarro's saying he is wrongly being forced to testify as to what his conversations were with Trump. Navarro is correct. But as usual, the Democrats decide we don't need to follow previous law or normal tradition or any of that. We do what we want. If we tell you, you have to testify, you better testify. And Navarro's saying, no, I'm not going to. Take it to court. Okay, have the hearing. They skip that. No, we're not going to talk to any judge. We're just going to put you in jail. That's where that's it.
They don't have the right to put someone into the jail.
Well, technically, if they were following the previous precedent, previous law, previous procedures, no, they wouldn't be. However, he's a Trump advisor, so he doesn't get the same privileges that Democrats get.
It's unbelievable because only the court can order some people go to the jail. How can Congress order people go to the jail? This is totally wrong.
Well, we'll see what happens. What happened here, too, is that they did not give Navarro enough time to appeal it, to force it to go to a judge. So the Democrats are just basically saying, here's the date, you report to the jail on that date, period. Now, if he goes to jail and it goes to court and it gets appealed, and 6 months from now, a judge says, that was wrong. He shouldn't have gone to jail. Well, the Democrats will still be happy no matter what, because he already would have been in jail. They like that. That's perfect for them.
I don't know what to say, because they are just totally wrongdoing, because this is not their right to say that Navarro or anyone else to go to the jail. This is not their right. They're just wrong. How could that happen? Now, how could the system allow that to happen? So my question is, if Navarro refuse to follow the Congress wrong order to go to the jail, what's going to happen?
I don't know. His lawyers are trying to deal with Congress on this issue. And so far, no one's intervened to do the right thing. No judge has had time to look at it. So probably Navarro will go to jail and serve 4 months. Now, the question is, will the voters remember? By the time he gets out of jail, it'll be very close to the time for the election in November. So will the public, the voting public, will they remember that yet again, the Democrats made up their own rules, their own laws to do what they want against their political enemies? And that's the important point with the Democrats. What do they do improperly against their enemies? They're not supposed to be able to do this.
Well, this is not only improperly, they're against the law, because law did not give their right to do so.
Well, normally the law would give the right to do so if it went to a judge and the judge said, okay, you don't have executive privilege. You weren't the chief of staff in the White House. You weren't a close enough advisor. And therefore, you think you had executive privilege, but you don't. So testify. And then Navarro has said he testified. If that was reviewed by a judge, which it should have been, he would testify.
So that means the judge is not up to the Congress, period.
No, but they've taken it upon themselves to do it. And so far, Navarro's attorneys and Congress could not come to an agreement. So they've ordered him to go to jail. If that was not the issue, if he was not a presidential close advisor, he wouldn't even qualify for this. If he was just another kind of mid-level advisor to Trump, or he's in the White House or any of that, then Navarro might say, I want executive privilege. And if the president doesn't agree to it and it goes to a judge and the judge says, no, you don't qualify, end of story. End of story.
Understandable. Well, let me ask you a question. According to the law, when Navarro filed the case to the judge during this time, he can stay out of the jail. He's waiting for the judge, right? He doesn't need to go to the jail while he's waiting for the judge's decision. So is that the
Normally that would be true.
sure? Okay. All right. So this is another example of how Democrats abuse their power so
Yeah,
badly.
this is where the term that Republicans use called lawfare, like warfare.
Uh-huh.
If you have warfare, you fight a
Okay.
war.
Mhm.
Lawfare is what the Democrats are doing, is to use the law, the judicial system, to punish their enemies. And you're
Mhm.
seeing that all the indictments of President Trump, all the advisors to Trump that at some point have been told they have to go to jail, Steve Bannon, Manafort, Roger Simon, you name it, they have to go to jail. And then in some case, when Trump was still president, he pardoned them. So he pardoned Michael Flynn. He pardoned many of these officials. Roger Simon, another one, he pardoned him. So he didn't have to go to jail.
Mhm.
But now he's not president, so he can't pardon anybody.
Right.
So
Well,
they bring up a new case like Navarro. There's nothing Trump can do at this point.
right. Right. So it's very clearly that obviously that the Democrats break the law to do
Yep.
what they want. They're breaking the
Yep.
law.
Exactly.
Okay, that's sad. That's why we need to vote, and that's why we need to bring Trump back to White House. So the second question is, we see that so many people are support Trump, more and more people, and I think it's much more than year 2020. So the question is, what do you see the biggest obstacle for people to bring Trump back to White House?
Well,
What,
they create as many obstacles on the Democratic side that they could possibly throw in. So you
Mhm.
start with more recently, let's say the January 6th, or calling that an insurrection. I
Mhm.
said 3 years ago, when the Democrats referred to January 6th as an insurrection, I said they did the term on purpose,
Mhm.
because the word insurrection is what appears in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
Right.
Now, the 14th Amendment was passed 1868, 3 years after the end of the Civil War, which ended 1865. Now, in 1865, when Lee surrenders to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, the soldiers, basically, Grant says to Lee, your soldiers who come from farms and they have nothing back at home and everything, they can go with their rifles home, back to Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, whatever the home state was. They can go back, and I'll pardon them. So as long as they don't create a continuing civil war, a continuing insurrection, they can go home, and now they can hunt for the food on their land, go back to their survival, with their families. So that's what happens at that point. Now, Congress realizes that many of these generals are very popular in the South, starting with Robert E. Lee. He ends up going to Lexington, Virginia, to become the president of Washington Lee University. The others, James Longstreet, many of the, that became famous, especially during Gettysburg, they go back to their homes, and if they run for Congress or Senate, they might get elected. So therefore, Congress introduces the 14th Amendment, which actually the main purpose of the amendment is due process. And what it basically means is, the main heart of the amendment means that the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, and the rest of the freedoms, right to bear arms, those kind of freedoms are extended to everybody through the 14th Amendment, and they can be incorporated or can't be incorporated. So that's basically, it's nicknamed the due process clause, that those first 10 amendments apply to everybody still, north, south, wherever they're in effect. So these generals go back, and they're very popular in their home states. If they were lucky enough to live and survive the war, They're very popular back home. So Congress, in addition to the regular part of the 14th Amendment, which is the due process, the incorporation of the Bill of Rights, that in addition to that, Section 3 of that amendment is that if you fought an insurrection against the United States, you cannot run for national office. Can't be a senator, can't be a congressman. Now, it also in the amendment says that the decision to judge whether it's an insurrection, the Civil War, no question it's an insurrection, armed insurrection of the southern states trying to separate and form their own Confederacy of the United States, Confederate States of America. So there's no question that it was an insurrection. However, the soldiers like Lee, like Longstreet, General Pickett, any of the other ones, they go back home and they're very popular with the people back home. So Congress decides we can't let these guys run for office and end up in Congress to be senators, to be congressmen. So they banned them through that amendment. Section 3, if you fought an insurrection against the United States, you can't run. Now, meantime, the decision of whether you actually fought in an insurrection will be determined by Congress. So what you have yet again is Democratic states or Democratic people within certain states decide, well, you don't need Congress. We'll decide. So they basically rule that President Trump, when he told people to go to the Capitol on January 6th and peacefully and patriotically protest if you want to, exercise your rights.
Right.
The J6 committee takes that part of his speech out.
Which
so it makes it look like Trump, pardon me?
Which breaking the law.
Well, of course, but it's not even an official committee, the J6 committee. So it's all rigged by the Democrats to make Trump look bad. And they use the word for January 6th as insurrection when they say nobody came into the Capitol with weapons. Nobody was trying to turn over the government of the United States. Nobody was trying to, kill congressmen or senators or any of that. But that didn't matter. They used that word. So now, 100 years later or more, you have the Supreme Court in Colorado say, we want to remove Trump from our ballots, the primary ballot and the election ballot in November, because he was an insurrectionist. That's how they do it. And because we've been saying he's an insurrectionist since 2021.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Tom. I think something wrong with the connection. Can you guys see me? Let's see. Hey, Tom. Hello, Tom.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. All right.
So anyway, that I was saying the term insurrection was used by the media and by the Democrats who control the media right at the time of January 6th. They use that right away. They don't say it was a riot, a disturbance, civil disobedience, nothing like that. Insurrection, because that's the exact word used in the 14th Amendment to try to ban people from being able to run for office. And they're trying to use that against Trump. So now the Colorado Supreme Court says, yes, take him off the ballot because he's an insurrectionist. So meantime, the appeal goes, this is 3 years ago, they appealed to the Supreme Court. And now just, within the last 2 weeks, the Supreme Court rules it was not 9-0. They don't want any discrepancy about this. 9-0, Trump did not commit an insurrection. And the term insurrection would have to be defined by Congress. Everybody leaves that out. Skip, we don't need Congress. We do what we want. So Supreme Court, and you have all these other states that pass the same rule in their state. One of the last states, Illinois, but you have Maine, you have other states that say, okay, we're going to ban Trump off the ballot as an insurrectionist, but we'll wait till the Supreme Court makes its final decision. So everybody in the country, so the Supreme Court recognizes that with the upcoming election, primaries and then national in November, there's going to be chaos. They need to get this resolved, and they decide that Trump was not an insurrectionist. He didn't meet the definition. The people that are trying to claim he was didn't refer it to Congress to define the insurrection or his activity in it. So then 9-0, Supreme Court rules, no, he cannot be removed from these ballots. And all the other states say, okay, he's on the ballot. Now, the latest trick, the latest thing, Jamie Raskin and the other Democratic congressmen have decided is, okay, we'll wait till later and we'll challenge the counting of the electors. So if Trump wins, they will do like what happened on January 6th. The Vice President, Pence, is in the Senate chamber and they're reading the roll call of the states. And the states are saying, okay, in Alabama, Trump got 8 electors. And in this state, so many electors, on and on. And when he crosses the threshold, I think 270 at the time, they can declare he's president. Well, now what happens is the riot interrupts the count. And it's a riot. They get into the building and all of that. Now, many are speculating that was on purpose. Pelosi wanted them to get in the building and stop the count because no one knew if Vice President Pence during the count was going to, when they get to Pennsylvania, when they get to Arizona, when they get to one of those swing states, where there's a big dispute about the counting of the votes, that Pence might say to that state, okay, you have 2 weeks, go home and recount, recheck your count. But the riot breaks out, the count is stopped, everybody goes, protects themselves and hide. Many of the protesters get in the building, many are escorted around by the police, and the net result is the count is stopped for several hours. Now, the insurrection, the entry, into the building starts around 12:30 Eastern time. Trump is still at the White House giving a speech. But anyway, then they stop 5-6 hours. All the senators and congressmen go into their various hiding places, and they wait for the police to eventually clear all these people out of the Capitol building. And then they say, I think 6 or 7 p.m., okay, now it's safe. We're going to resume the count. And at that point, Pence just says, okay, I accept everybody's count. That's it. And Trump loses and Biden wins. That's how that happens.
So they're going to do it again because right now the vice president is Kamala Harris.
Exactly right. Now,
so what do we do?
The idea of the vice president managing the count in the Senate chamber, the idea of the vice president also is considered the head of the Senate. And so the vice president, in past history, going back to Thomas Jefferson, there were times they stopped the count and had to recertify it. So this would not be the first time in the history of the United States that the count was interrupted or states were told, go back, recount, make sure it's right, you're accurate, all of that. But after the disturbance, riot, whatever, after the interruption, when the group comes back, Pence just says, okay, proceed with the count. Everybody's accepted. Biden wins.
So, Tom, I have a question regarding this issue. Is there any way that people can prevent it from happening? Because this time we have a VP, Kamala Harris, Democrats, and crazy Democrats, and they will do anything. They don't
Well, they
even.
could, but what you have now, well, this is what Congressman Jamie Raskin
Mhm,
from Maryland, that's his latest strategy. We
mhm,
can't stop him by prosecuting him with 91 counts in 4 different indictments. We
right,
can't seem to stop him all these other ways. So that's how we'll stop him. The
right.
same way the count stopped on January 6th, the same thing to stop Trump in at that time, January 6th,
Mhm,
21, was that the count just was at that point was just accelerated, get it over with, count the votes. That's it. Electoral College puts Biden at the top. So
mhm,
this time, Raskin is saying, that worked out pretty well. We'll do that again.
right,
We'll do it exactly again. When the
right,
states come in that are questionable, just go right by them.
right.
Kamala Harris will say, okay, Pennsylvania, you've been accused of cheating. No, we're not. Just tell us how many voted, and they'll go with that. So that's what could happen this time. Now, Trump's strategy this time is to have so many overwhelming number of votes
Mhm.
for him. And his expression is too big to rig. So
Okay.
it's not going the state vote isn't going to be within 5 or 10,000, win by 50,000, win, by historic highs. And
Mhm,
then it will be too close. They won't be able to rig it. They won't be able to, so if Kamala Harris improperly tries to stop it or improperly interrupts it, then they could take her to court or whatever. But eventually, Trump would win and be declared the winner of the Electoral College. Therefore, he's president. That's what Trump and the Republicans are hoping for.
okay. Do you think this is a good strategy? What do you
It's the
think?
only. That's all they have. What do they have if elections matter? So Biden gets elected. It's a total disaster for the country. He picks Kamala Harris, which is his insurance policy. Nobody's going to fire me because they don't want her. She's
Mhm,
too stupid to run the country. We don't trust her. We don't want her.
right,
However, she becomes the vice president. That's Biden's insurance policy. Don't
right.
take Biden out before the end of the term. She'll be president. And if she's an incumbent in November 24, if she's an incumbent president
Mhm,
at that time, she'll have a huge black female base and she'll be able to run for president 2 more times.
mhm. So that is
So, so
rapid.
yeah, so that'll lock in the Democrats that way. So
Right.
that's the issue. But in the meantime, she got elected. She's the vice president. So that's why if the votes are so huge for Trump in the Electoral College, then that's the idea that she won't be able to countermand it.
Mhm. Well, it's really up to them because they don't care about break the law. So we'll see.
You're right.
Yeah. And
You're
then
right.
also, how many is considered big win? You said 50, at least 50,000 more votes, or
No, I'm saying that some of the states that were lost,
Mhm.
supposedly lost in the last election, 2020,
Yeah.
were very close. When they
Right,
did the counts on them, Biden gets to win by 10,000 votes or less when
right,
there's 100,000 cast in that state, or
right,
nationally, how many million were cast. So
right.
that's the idea now, and it's
Mhm.
about the only hope that the Republicans have is that pretty much everybody, including the White House, expects Trump to win.
Mhm.
So now, after he wins, what's next? Well, let's count. If we can't cheat big enough in the election
Mhm.
that it's so close that they bring in ballots in the middle of the night, they tell the people watching the election, oh, you can go home now, it's over. And then when they come back in the morning, somehow Biden got another 10,000 votes and he's declared the winner.
Mhm.
So if it's close, they'll try that. And it'll help probably in some states. But at the
Right,
national level, at the end of the day, the votes in November, and based on how the vote count goes in each state, is how many electoral
right,
college votes get awarded to each candidate.
right.
So at that point, that's going to be the strategy is the same as it was in January 6th, disrupt the count and have the vice president go ahead and certify. And in this case, Kamala Harris. So on January 6th, no matter what the count is in November, on January 6th, the electors tell each state, okay, we're for Trump. So many for Trump, so many for Biden, so many for a couple of other independents, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's say. And so at that point, that's going to be what determines who wins. That's what determined last time on January 6th, Biden won because he had more electoral votes when Pence stopped the counting. Now this time, they'll do the same thing. Now they've got their own, Kamala Harris.
That's the thing. So that's the reason that we need to come out and vote, win big, win huge. So this
too big to rig. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And then for the third question of today is about a sheriff. A sheriff's rights, or sheriff's constitutional rights and obligation to investigate something. The question is coming from General Mike Flynn. He actually tweeted on X and then said that Dar Leaf is a constitutional sheriff up in Michigan, and the letter to he write a letter to James Jordan is very serious, set of the allegations about election fraud perpetrated from overseas as well as pressure from state of Michigan officers. These need far wider distribution in the world of citizen journalism. If we want to win this time, we are going to have to get the word out about these cases of election fraud that disfranchise every single legal American citizens. So that's why I'm asking, what is the constitutional right of a sheriff?
I don't know to what extent that's been tested legally. Normally, the Constitution says each state will set up its own procedures for the election. However, overall, the federal government is in charge of the overall election. So to what extent a local sheriff can bring the case, local attorney general, secretary of state, and all of that, they have a lot of power. I don't know to what extent they've been able to use it over the years or what the Supreme Court has said about that power. So that's at issue in this case. And I don't know, all of the rationale that General Flynn is using to say one way or the other. But I think it's an untested area, basically, how much power the local government has, the sheriff, secretary of state, all of that, governor, compare. Now, the Constitution says that the election in each state will be governed by the legislature of the state. Yet, in the past elections, we've had the governor make his own decision, or others in the state, the court in the state decide, oh, no, Trump gets this and blah, blah, blah. So I think that it's untested area. But in the Constitution, it says state legislature can change the procedures. In other words, state legislature can determine if the vote is going to last for 45 days or whether it's going to be same day. The state legislature can decide if they're going to require voter ID or not. Many of the individual provisions for voting are determined by the state's legislature. And in several cases, in the past couple of elections, the governor or somebody else, a judge, weighed in and overruled the legislature. And theoretically, that's not right. So it's a good question. What's going to happen in 2024? I think that, we all talk about how important the election is. Most important election of our lifetime. But the Democrats know that. Guys like Jamie Raskin, natural born liar, he knows that. So they'll pull out every excuse they can have to trip up Trump and win the election. They'll try very, very hard, and they might. That might happen. So Trump is saying, I can't win a state by 10,000. They'll probably steal 10,000, no problem. Got to win by a huge amount. throughout the state. So take it out of the state governor or local politicians to overrule what the electorate wants and make sure everybody gets to vote.
So, well, thank you, Tom. So what is the normal duty of a sheriff? Let's just talk about their normal duty. So what's the difference between a local sheriff and the FBI agent? So what's the difference?
Well, the sheriffs are in most cases elected in their county to be the chief law enforcement officer in that county.
Right.
So if they're going to investigate election fraud or whether the city or the sitting legislature, overstepped its bounds, or whether the judges or the governor or any of that, the sheriff would have a great deal of power to investigate that. Now, at the federal level, you have basically that the state legislature can make rule changes,
right?
But not the governor, not judges,
right?
The legislature. Now, when that happens, and we had that happen in 2020, where they made up their own rules and got away with it, and it didn't really. I think that the Democrats basically overwhelmed Republicans in 2020. They had so many issues in so many states that it was almost impossible. And you had, now the Republican Party has a new head, new chairman. And before, the chairman was Ronna McDonald. So she said, which was agreeing with Trump at the time, that the voting should take place on election day and not for 45 days beforehand. And that should be enforced, and voter ID and all these other rules to keep it clean. Well, what happens is the Democrats don't play by those rules. So what happens is that, let's take Georgia, for example, which I have talked about before. The very popular candidate for Senate was a football star at the University of Georgia and in the National Football League, Herschel Walker. He runs for senator. Now, Walker, the Republicans are saying he's so popular, no need to vote 45 days in advance. Just vote on election day, vote for Herschel. Well, by election day, when the polls open up on election day, Herschel Walker is already a couple million votes behind. And he can't make up the difference in one day. And that's what happens. He loses. And so now that's been the issue. Trump himself said, I want same-day voting. Well, that's great if everybody does it. But it's not great if only the Republicans do it and don't get enough people out. And that takes the chance it could be severe weather that day, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, something that people just say, I can't go out in this weather. I'm staying home. So it happened to be good enough weather that day, but they were already losing. And then they hear on the news that, the Democratic candidate is winning by 50,000 votes, and Herschel Walker now has, 2,000. And now he's going to try and make up the difference in one day. And it doesn't happen. So he doesn't get elected. So now Ronna McDonald, as chairman of the RNC, Republican National Committee, has presided over 2 or 3 elections in a row where the Republicans lose. And so now the Republican National Committee, with urging from Trump, but the committee decides we can't have this. We need more aggressive leaders of the RNC. We'll have a chairman and a co-chairman. The chairman's going to be, from North Carolina, I believe Whatley, chairman of the state committee. Ronna McDonald started out chairman of the Michigan State Committee. So anyway, she decides she'll resign. Right after the last primary, she'll quit. They can elect for the first time a new chairman, Whatley, and a new co-chairman, Lara Trump. And so now the two of them, now the question is going to be, how many months until November? How much time do they have to try to straighten out these voting issues and early voting and dumpsters and drop boxes and all of this stuff? Can they do it? Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to take an enormous push and encouragement from voters. Go out. Don't go by the polls. Don't go by what you hear. Don't go by Trump's winning by 30 points. Well, they can cheat that much. So vote no matter what. Get out and vote for Trump. Make it huge. As Trump himself has coined the phrase, make it too big to rig.
Right. That's right. I think that's the only strategy right now to win 2024.
Right.
Right. And I see some people just saying hi to you, and thank you so much for spending time. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Tom. Hi, Tom. People know. Yeah, it's great. Thank you. 谢谢. Helen, and then Wolf, and Jolie, and then Yui, and then Ching Ching, Big Dreams. They all say hi to Tom. And then
hello, everybody.
Yeah, and then Zhang Nan said there are so many people from mainland China, Hong Kong, Filipino, from Korean neighbor. Most of them think that Trump has a lot of cases right now, some legal cases, and he is he's interact the 2020 Georgia election. She wants to, Zhang Nan wants to explain, but her English is not that good. So she wants us to make a program that explain the cases that they are trying to put on Trump. And then the lies from the mainstream media. So that means she said she has a lots of neighbor from different Asian country, and then they are just watching the mainstream media, and then they believe that Trump actually have the election fraud on 2020, especially in state of Georgia. And she wants to, Zhang Nan, I don't know if it's she or he, but Zhang Nan wants to explain to this neighbor, no, it's not, they're lies, but his or her English is not that good. So Zhang Nan just wondering if us can make a program, just explain the main cases that against Trump. Actually, I think we already did, right?
We've done that. And then that changes as different rulings come out, the status of those cases. Like, for instance, right now, Fulton County, Georgia.
Right.
What a mess.
Right.
And it's interesting there, if you want to talk about that one right now, because that's the one closest to being decided. Right. The judge down there runs for election. The judge hearing the hearing about Fani Willis and Wade and the whole procedure that they went through. So here you have a situation where Willis gets elected the district attorney. Right. She wants, and she campaigns, just like, the woman attorney general in New York. They campaign, I'm going to get Trump. Right. That's it. Get Trump. So she's going to get Trump. She gets elected district attorney. The sitting judge in Fulton County that hears this hearing over the last couple of weeks, he backs her up earlier to be the district attorney. He contributes some small amount of money to her to do that. So that's kind of the issue, is that he really doesn't want to remove her. Secondly, Fulton County is mostly Black. And, if he's going to have to remove one of the two Black prosecutors, he's not going to remove the woman that gets elected, Fani Willis. So he leaves her alone, but he says, okay, one of the two of you or Wade, have to go. So Wade then drops out. He basically resigns from being a prosecutor. Now, earlier, the dispute that they were having last week is whether they both lied under oath, because they said that they did not start a personal sexual relationship prior to 2022, sometime like that. So many times,
Which is lie.
You think? So anyway, Wade, and the other thing is, in that case, They haven't even released that they were sending thousands of text messages to each other.
Right.
And they tracked his phone to going to her house at midnight, maybe leaving at 4 or 5 in the morning. But they're talking strategy of how they're going to prosecute Trump. Meantime, she gives him a salary because he's not a full-time employee of the county. She gives him the position of being the lead prosecutor against Trump. He's never prosecuted a felony. He doesn't have anywhere close to that experience, but she names him to be in charge of the prosecution. Then she awards him $650,000 in pay to be the lead prosecutor. And what do? They prepare diligently for this prosecution. And they find it easier to prepare on cruise ships, in luxury hotels all over the world, traveling together, all of that. So that just shows how serious they were. They were diligent to work together on the strategy to prosecute and convict Trump. So meantime, she comes up with this story. He pays for the cruise. He pays the bills. He pays for all of this travel. And she reimburses him in cash. There's no record. She gives him cash. During the testimony, they ask her, where'd you get the cash? And in one case, she says, well, from earlier campaigns. What?
Campaigns.
What? Now, most of the states have laws that say if you receive money for your campaign and then win or lose, you might run again. You don't have to turn the money into anybody. You don't have to turn the money into the U.S. Treasury. You can keep the money and hold it and then run next time and then hold that money and then run next time. You don't have to give it back to anybody. So she's got that money from previous campaigns, but it's supposed to be used for campaigning.
Yeah, of course.
So if you get $100,000 today to campaign for 2024, win or lose, you can save the money that you didn't spend for 2028. You can't save the money and then travel around the world with that money. No. Personal gain. Personally take that money and use it for personal profit, let's say. So, but she did that. And the judge, being basically a wimp, he decides, oh, I can't touch her. She's the elected, and she's black, and she's female. So Wade is also black, but a black female is more powerful than a black male. So therefore, he can't offend her or the people that voted for her. So far, he doesn't remove her. He says, you or Wade have to go. Wade already just voluntarily. Now, they had broken up, so their relationship had been over for a year or two anyway. But Wade resigns. So meantime, he had been paid $650,000. Now, is somebody going to make him pay it back or account for it? No, probably. So that's where they stand with those guys, is who's going to prosecute them for misappropriation of the campaign fund.
That's the key question.
And she, when she testifies, she is so arrogant. You can't touch me. You can't tell me what to do. You can't accuse me of corruption. You're the ones that are corrupt, not me. See, she is so vicious testifying. So probably her base loves that. Oh, what a strong black woman. That's great. But, it's not over, because now the ethics of paying cash, the ethics of the trips, the ethics of hiring Wade with no background. Now, she is the one that campaigns, I'm going to get Trump. Now, you would think in an office with all the attorneys that she's got, with all the other available prosecutors, you would think she'd find a Democratic prosecutor that would viciously and successfully prosecute Trump. Wade has no experience. So far, they don't get very far. So, that's where that stands. So the case slowly crumbles out from under Fani Willis, and it's not over. She's going to be investigated for ethics violations, for misappropriation of the campaign funds, wherever this cash came from. Where'd you get it? Did you get it legally? She claims, well, I paid cash and there's no record. Too bad.
Has to be
So
held accountable.
yeah, so we'll see where that goes. But that's the earliest in the main case. Meantime, these motions go back and forth. People are discussing the case, and it gets to be what I've talked about for months is that the Democratic Party waited so long to bring these charges that stupidly they thought, oh, perfect, we'll bring these charges. Trump will be in court. He can't campaign. He'll lose. We'll win. Everything's perfect. What they don't count on, because they're ignorant, and a guy like Wade, if he had any experience, or Willis, or any of these Alvin Bragg in New York, or Iran in New York, all of these people, if they had any experience, if they were smart at all, they would have known that once they wait 3 years to start these prosecutions. Oh, we'll get him. We'll have him in court at the height of the election, the height of campaign season. Mm-hmm. Stupidly, they don't realize that many of the laws they're trying to use are untested or haven't been used before, are going to be argued in court. Mm-hmm. So what happens is defense makes a motion, and they said, wait a minute, we can't do this now. We need more time. Mm-hmm. Just like, recently the prosecution gave Trump's attorneys 70,000 documents a couple of weeks ago. And the attorney said, wait a minute, we can't go to trial in 2 weeks. We've got to have at least so many weeks to review what you gave us.
Right.
Oh, okay. So they extended maybe a month, something like that. But in the meantime, all these motions many of them are going to be undecided next month, the month after, whatever. Mm-hmm. So basically, like the Fani Willis case, by the time they get through all of this stuff with her shenanigans, mm-hmm. and the motions against her and how the evidence got turned over and what they're trying to litigate, by the time that gets reviewed, goes up to an appellate court, then goes to a Supreme Court, then comes back down, there is very slim chance that any of these cases will be concluded by Election Day. Now what? Now what? That's their mistake. Like I said, stupidly, they waited 2-3 years. They could have had all of this decided and these cases done by now. But no, they're not even close to starting.
Well, that's a good news.
The land fraud case where Trump is supposed to pay $355 million, that is unbelievably absurd. Unbelievably. Because that judge, first of all, Erdogan is quoted as saying, before the trial starts, Trump's guilty.
Right.
Trump is guilty.
Right.
Now we're going to have a trial to prove that he's guilty, but I've already decided, and no jury. So the judge has already said, I think he's guilty. They go through all of this and it rules later he's guilty. Among the things the judge says that is totally stupid is Trump used Mar-a-Lago as collateral to get a construction loan. He used other buildings in Manhattan to get construction loans. And the company that gave the loans, the banks, have testified in that case, it wasn't a fraud case.
Right.
We got paid back every penny we lent to Trump, and we would gladly do it again. We would do future business with him, that this is a great thing. Among the things that Erdogan was saying was that Trump lied about how much his properties were valued because he was using them for collateral to get the loans. Mm-hmm. So one of the main properties, obviously, that's obvious to everybody, Erdogan decides, the judge, noted expert in real estate, no, the judge decides Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. Most real estate experts in Florida, in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, Florida, are saying that property is easily worth a couple $100 million.
Right.
Not 18 million. Excuse me. So anyway, that's what's going on with that. That he finds Trump 355. Then Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, campaigns like Fani Willis in Fulton County. She campaigns, I'm going to get Trump. It's all about Trump, not about New York. The streets are shambles, the migrants, the criminals, everything going wrong in New York. Oh, no, we don't care about that. Only got to get Trump. Mm-hmm. And that's her whole position. So she encourages Erdogan, go ahead and go after him for fraud, getting those loans. Now, at the end of the trial, toward the end of the trial, and it's not a jury trial, it's a bench trial. Just the judge will decide. Of course, he's already decided before the first testimony. But in any event, one of the senior vice presidents of the Deutsche Bank in Europe, I think, testifies at the end of the case, Trump did nothing wrong. We got every penny back we lent him with interest, and we would gladly do business with him again. There was no fraud, very professional organization, how they organized, how much each building was worth, how they estimated. And the contracts for the loan say to Trump, you tell us what you think that property is worth and why, and then we'll have our own independent appraisers examine the same property, come up with our value and say why, and we'll go from there. And so basically that's what he does. The bank comes back and says he did nothing different than any other developer building these $150 million buildings, coming up with collateral to put up that if they don't pay the loan back, they lose the collateral. Now, including Mar-a-Lago, his beloved Mar-a-Lago would be taken away from him if he defaults on the loan, and he's used it as collateral. So anyway, this judge has decided on his own, Mar-a-Lago is not worth whatever they said it was worth. It's only worth $18 million.
Right.
And Alina Habba, Trump's attorney, and other attorneys have come out and said that property, when Trump bought the property, whatever, 20 years ago, it was worth more then than now. So in any event, that whole trial is a sham. Then that's not good enough to say you got to come up with 355. In his ruling, you've got to dismember the company. Your sons are running it now, take it away from them. You got to tear up the company, and you've got to pay so many $1 million a day or whatever it is in interest while you appeal. You can't file an appeal unless you come up with, X millions of dollars. But in order to do that, their theory is, well, he'll have to sell parts of the company, part of his holdings, part of his real estate, maybe Mar-a-Lago. Now he can, that's just to file an appeal. That's not to pay the fine, that's the appeal. So their idea is that if he's going to pay that fine, he's going to have to sell a big part of his company, a huge part. Well, that's not over. So you say, okay, he'll appeal it. Trump will appeal. And then the judge and Letitia James, Attorney General, are saying, oh, no. You have to put up so many millions of dollars you can't appeal. That's absurd. It's another Democratic nonsense to go after Trump.
Well, these people need to be held accountable. Once again,
they're evil. They're evil.
I agree. And this, once again, a proof that without law and order, the country's lost. So these people, this is not they're practicing the law. They are doing actually, this is a revolution to Trump. It's a revolution to the United States, to people. So these people are our enemies, are the evils. So we need to hold them accountable. Cannot just let them do whatever they can, because we have a law, we have order. Now,
in addition, in their mind, to destroying Trump is they're destroying other developers in New York,
right?
Because they're looking at the results, and they're saying, if they do an investment, if they go to build a high rise and do what Trump did, these guys, Letitia James and the Democrats, will come after them. They'll say, okay, we want your property. We want you, and we want to come after you. And so you have a number of very reputable investors in Manhattan saying, we're not building anything else anymore. We're moving out. We're getting out of here while we can before they take away our property.
Right. They're destroying New York. They're destroying
New York, and they're proud of it.
Right.
Proud of it. Look what we're doing.
Yeah, and then they opened the southern border to have the illegals destroy this country. So they all they're doing is destroying the country, destroying the legal system. Yeah.
And the latest stunt that the Biden administration is doing is people are saying, like Texas, Arizona, they're saying, we're going to close the border. We're tired of 12 million people crossing the border with Mexico, coming into the United States illegally. And eventually we want them to vote. They'll vote Democratic. We'll be in power forever. But they're taking a lot of criticism for the border being open. So what do they do now? They fly in 320,000 illegal immigrants over the border into the central part of the United States. Now what? You don't know who they are, where they are, and it was funded by the Biden administration. When this came out publicly 2 weeks ago, the Biden administration admits it. Yeah, we're doing that. So what? So what? So, yeah, this is a sad situation. And Biden,
they are doing the human trafficking in the Biden administration.
Well, that's already, they've been doing that at the border with everything, because the cartels, if anything, when they fly over like that, they might not have to deal with the cartels. They're dealing with finding these people in Europe or South America or Asia, and they're not crossing the border where the cartels make some of the money. They fly them over the border and sneak them into the United States. And then, the investigators found this out and revealed it. And the White House just said, okay, so what? So what? So anyway, the cartels have already been trafficking. I'm
sorry, Tom. I just don't know why people still vote for them. Why people just don't get up and fight with the government.
I made the comment in the last podcast that, people have been saying now that how much of this fraud is going on, how much is going on, or even legitimate voting for Biden. And the expression is, why do tens of millions of voters vote for their own destruction? Why do they vote for Biden? Why do they vote for Democrat? And you look at the polls, and the polls are probably accurate. Right. Biden, those are low numbers. It's a third of the country, 34%. Now, he's going to get most of those votes when it comes voting time. How can people vote for him? How can they vote for the Democratic machine? How can they vote for the people that allow this to happen and are allowing the slow, systematic destruction of the United States against their own interest? You've got these poor Black Democrats in all of these cities and states voting Democratic. In the meantime, the Democrats are bringing in the people that are going to take away their jobs and benefits, and they still vote Democratic. What's the matter with them? Why is that? What's that?
I don't understand either.
Now, Trump, if you remember, in previous elections, when he was trying to get the Black and Hispanic vote, he would tell those voters, take a look at what the Democrats have done for you. Nothing. And, take a look at that. How can you keep voting for them? And then his final expression, which the Democrats were offended, is, what have you got to lose? Or Trump would say, what the hell have you got to lose? And then they would still vote. Now, originally, I think 20 years ago, the Democrats, about 4% voted Republican. Now it's up in the 20s, mid-20s. They're much more supportive of Trump. And some of the smarter Blacks and Hispanics are starting to realize, wait a minute, these jobs that should have been our jobs are going to migrants.
Right.
We don't want that. But we vote for Biden. That's what we get.
Right. And then the Tyson food, just lay off the, what happened there. They hired illegal immigrants and lay off the U.S. citizens. Okay, we have two questions regarding to the legal battles. Yui said, Tom, why are they starting these legal battles so late? You're just talking about that.
I've talked about that.
Yeah,
they started it because they thought that these battles in court, the actual trials, would be going on right now during the primary season in the time leading up to the national election in November. They did that because they're stupid. They're stupid. The lawyers that they put in charge of figuring out these prosecutions were dumb, inexperienced. Guys like Nathan Wade in Fulton County never tried a big case, never. So they don't know in a big case like that where there's going to be motions to dismiss certain counts or look at certain provisions in the Constitution. Those motions, they can't rush the Supreme Court or the appellate court. Those motions, they'll make the motion, and it'll take a couple of months in the lower court. And then the outcome of that, either side, if Trump wins, Trump loses, whoever loses will appeal it to the Supreme Court. They don't have to take the case. So they can decide. They submit a writ of certiorari, it's called, and the Supreme Court decides if they'll accept the writ and schedule a court date for that case. Now, the Supreme Court has just now heard their last case of this season. So the rulings for this year will be completed June or July. They start making the announcements of the outcome of each case after case after case.
They're done
now,
for
and usually by June or July, the outcome is revealed. Who won each case, what the decision was, how many justices voted yes or no in that case. Now, the problem for the Democrats is that that's going to be it until probably next fall. When the new term comes up, it's too late. Too late to take Trump off the campaign. Primaries will be gone. The national conventions will be done in the summer. And many of these cases will not, the motions that go to the Supreme Court won't even be resolved by then. So the court is looking at resolving the biggest issues. The first biggest issue that they had to resolve, a couple of weeks ago, they rendered their decision that Trump cannot be declared an insurrectionist and pulled off the ballots across the country. 9-0, the court ruled on that. So those are the kind of decisions that they could have had made 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They, like I said, stupidly, thank you, thank God, stupidly, the Democrats waited because they'll wait till the last minute and they think that it'll screw up Trump. He won't be able to campaign. Well, the problem is, the motions are being made now, or arguments on certain motions in the last couple of months were made before the Supreme Court, like the Colorado ballot. So meantime, they're not, that has not kept Trump off the campaign. Several primaries are already gone. And he's been able to hold a rally in every state that he wanted to. And the rallies helped tremendously. Now, I think one of your listeners, our listeners, made a comment about the rallies, why he picked certain places to do his rallies, if I remember right. The reason he does that is that even though he has no competition now, he's going to win every primary, that's a given. He's already been declared by the committee the presumptive nominee, Republican nominee for president. So that's all done. But he's still going to hold rallies from now till November. And the reason is that in the local states, many of the people don't know the individual candidates that are running now for office. They know the incumbents. If you're a primary in Ohio, they know Jim Jordan. They know J.D. Vance. But they might not know all of the lower candidates for Senate in the state or House in the state, or in some of the other states where there's a new candidate to run for the U.S. Senate or U.S. Congress and all of that. So Trump is holding these rallies, get his message out. It's covered by the local media in that state, sometimes the national media, sometimes it's on Newsmax or RSB, the podcast. It's like a podcast. They cover every one of Trump's rallies on the internet. But the states themselves put on TV if it's in their state. The reason to do that is to introduce, and in some cases, he calls to the podium a local candidate so that people in that state know who it is. They see that person, hear that person's voice for the first time because of Trump. And then, of course, Trump gives the endorsement. So that's why Trump is that's how he picks the states. Where
Sure.
does he want to get votes for
Mhm.
candidates in that state, whichever state it is? And that's how he does it, how he selects the states, why he selects the states. Now, right now, one of the debates in the campaign right now with Trump is he's a lot more popular with blacks, with Hispanics. He
Right.
might have a chance to win New York, which is historically so blue, so Democratic. And so they're considering having a Trump rally in New York City at Madison Square Garden.
That's great.
So we'll see. They have to negotiate, of course, with whoever the authorities are that run the garden and all of that. But that's under consideration, that he might be able to win New York, and it would help to have a rally in New York. And it's not, Madison Square Garden in the heart of New York City, and then maybe upstate, some other parts of New York for the rural vote. Most of the states like that, the city is Democratic. The rural part, the farmland, are Republicans. Now in New York, you've got the city of New York City, you've got Buffalo, you've got Albany. So you have cities that are very Democratic. In Illinois, my home state, Chicago, very blue, very Democratic. Then some of the areas, some of the bigger cities in Illinois, Democratic. But the heartland of Illinois, Republican. So these are states where it's very close between the Midland, and the silent majority, let's say, and the blue Democratic cities. However, with all of these migrants coming into these cities, with the cities being shut down, with murders and things that are so publicized, where the people feel so endangered, even in New York City, you've got the governor sending the National Guard to guard subway stations in Manhattan. So that's unheard of that they would do that. So that's partly unfinished strategy. We don't know if Trump's going to go ahead and do that. I think probably yes. That if he thinks he's got a shot at New York City, I mean, at state of New York electors, that's a good place to go. And we don't know the local candidates. Are they all Democratic? Are they all, would he have a chance of finding a Republican candidate to endorse? And I think that might be the problem in going to a rally at Madison Square Garden. Who is he going to call to the podium and say, I want you to meet this person? They'll be a great candidate. They're so Democratic. But Mayor Adams and the administration of New York City are vulnerable. The people are not happy about all the people that have come in.
Right. Well, thank you so very much, Tom, for our discussion today. We start with 3 topics, but then we have so many informations that you share with us. And thank you so much. We have lots of friends and audience just coming in and say hi to you, and thank you so much for your time. And then, so today the program is English version right now, and I will do the Chinese version in about 2 hours, and then I'll post on YouTube. And thank you so very much, Tom. And then the message I got from our conversation is go out and vote. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Win big, win huge. Because the leaderships matter.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. And I know you're going to have another interview in the afternoon. So thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you sometime next week.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane.